And welcome. I'm your host, Greg Ambrosius, up in my cottage in northern Wisconsin, where last I looked, Chris, it was 64 degrees and a 12-mile-an-hour wind out of the north. A little cool here, but forget about the weather. Let's talk about who I'm joined by today. He is NFFC Hall of Famer Chris Eibl. He's been dominating our contest since 2009. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
Is it a little bit warmer down there in Illinois?
A little bit. I don't get outside much because I'm a tax accountant, but no, it's a little bit nicer than that here, and wet weather's been okay.
Yeah, now we're finally got the summer here, so people are jumping in the lake. I told you, it's like 45 degrees. I mean, the water is freezing. The kids are out there tubing. Yeah, this is fun. Summer's here. I'm sitting on the shore. Man, this is freezing here, but it's all right. So, okay, let's get right to the details here. Last year, we inducted you into the NFFC Hall of Fame. You were supposed to just coast after that. Instead, I looked at your team page yesterday and I saw that you won 20 NFFC league titles last year. What the hell? Don't you know that you're already in the Hall of Fame? You're supposed to just relax? Oh, back he is. Hey, I just said you won 20 league titles last year. What the hell? You're supposed to relax.
It wouldn't have been fun to stop winning. So, I had to, I feel like then the pressure really amps up because then people start to know who you are. So
that's true.
I guess, I'm thankful to you guys for having inducted me in last year. It helped get my name out there, ended up becoming a little more visible in the fantasy space and able to talk about this stuff. But again, it wouldn't have been enough to show up and just get crushed. So tried to make your Hall of Fame nomination mean something.
Well, it definitely did. And talk a little bit about being inducted into the Hall of Fame last year. We do it at the Bellagio. We're on this big stage. We bring up all the other Hall of Famers. We bring up all the other past champions. I mean, I know it sounds kind of corny to some folks, a Hall of Famer for fantasy, but it is kind of a cool honor, isn't it?
Yeah, it was definitely fun. You guys actually called me when I was in Disney World with my family, and I was just like, "Oh, I'm a Hall of Famer now. It's gotta give me some respect." Of course, I'm talking to my 5-year-old daughter. So, no, but it was great. I think like you guys have such a great fantasy community that shows up each year to drafts in Vegas. So like, 50 plus people coming up to me, throughout that weekend saying congrats. Just again, getting my name out there. I was able to do a little more on, I haven't been on social media before, so I was able to contribute some articles, some places and sort of talk to people about how I approach fantasy football. So that was really great for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It is cool. I watched you. We went to the Westgate. You had your plaque with you, and everyone's talking to you. Everybody knows you're the new Hall of Famer and stuff. I mean, we just did this in baseball with a guy by the name of Philip Dussault, who won 21 out of 22 leagues in baseball or whatever, and they treated him like a god as well. I mean, again, it's kind of corny, but we're all like-minded people in this hobby, right? And it is kind of cool to have that recognition of being a Hall of Famer, I think.
No, you started, or at least I started playing fantasy football just because I love the competition for bragging rights. So that's certainly a nice feather in my cap, if you will.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, I was proud to show that off.
Very good. Okay, I will announce right now that we will have a new Hall of Famer. We haven't told this person yet that he is in the Hall of Fame, but we will be announcing that soon, and we will be inducting another person in the Hall of Fame. We've got 9. You were the 9th one, so we will have 10 in the Hall of Fame. And the goal is really now to start doing it every year. We've been kind of stingy on our Hall of Fame nominations through the first 18 years, but I think 9 and 18, I think we're ready for 10 and 19. So get ready for that one. We're going to announce that pretty soon. All right. When I looked at your resume last year, it was a slam dunk decision on our part. I mean, last year at this time, you had 46 league titles, 11 auction league titles, 8 primetime league titles, 3 classic league titles, a super auction league title, and a whole lot more. I mean, did you even know your own resume at the time before I announced this? And were you impressed with the number of titles that you had in a 12, 13-year period?
No, I do keep pretty good track of it, and and I always like to tout my winning percentage. I mean, I have to, since I haven't won an overall championship yet.
There you go.
And so, no, I've always been pretty proud of what I've been able to accomplish. I know, you know, year in, year out, I've had success. So like I said, it felt good to be honored for it. And like I said, didn't want to rest on laurels, wanted to win some more.
20
Do the
more
same.
league titles, so that gives you 66 at this time, which is pretty damn good. So one of the reasons we inducted you into the Hall of Fame, though, is because you've won in just about every format, and you did that again last year. I mean, last year you won a league title in the prime time. You won a league title in the Classic. You won a league title in the Super. You won a league title in the online auction championship, and you won 16 Draft Champions League titles. So how hard is it to win in multiple formats? And how do you, oh, there he is. He's back again. So I just was mentioning how you won so many different titles in different formats, right? You won Primetime, Classic, Super, Auction Championship, 16 Draft Champions League titles. How hard is it to win in multiple formats, and how do you do it?
I think you just have to adapt your strategy in different formats but at the end of the day, it's all about, you know, grinding out really every advantage you can get, whether it's a managed league where you need to stay on top of waivers all the time, or, you know, maybe the strategy is a little different in a best ball where you know, you don't have that fallback option of attacking running back through waivers, and you maybe need to hit running back a little harder in best ball.
Right.
So the strategy definitely adapts for each contest, but at the end of the day, you're still trying to take in all the news you can, see what the other top players are doing, and like give it your all on the fab. That's so key.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned that you are a tax accountant. So you're a
Yes.
numbers guy, which kind of translates to fantasy sports as well. How does your occupation help you in fantasy football, let's say? Or does it?
Um, I don't know that it helps, but it is, I guess, I will say, you know, it's both math oriented.
Yeah.
The one thing I'll say about my job is I think everyone I work with, I really appreciate them because they do a great job of understanding that the second week of September is sort of my number one holiday. If you want to make me work on Thanksgiving, if you want to make me work on Christmas, that's fine. But let me draft that second
Yeah.
weekend of September, second week of September. So everyone's helpful, but, you know, can't say beyond that there are too many similarities between tax accounting and fantasy
Well, at least
football.
it's not tax season in September, right? So you're okay there.
Oh, it's always tax season, Greg.
Yeah, I suppose. Okay, let's look at each of the formats and then kind of discuss what you like about them. Let's just start with the Draft Champions National Championship. You always do well in this, and last year you won 16 league titles, 16 of them. You now have 34 Draft Champions League titles, which is, you know, just amazing. Now, I know you like to draft as early as possible and as much as possible. Discuss why you like the draft before the NFL draft, and last year, how did that benefit you? I know a guy like Najee Harris turned out to be a steal once he got drafted by Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, I think one of the benefits of drafting so early is I've had reasonable success with sort of predicting trends in terms of the rookies, as you mentioned, whether it's Najee or you know, other guys this year like James Cook. Usually my approach to that and getting in those early leagues is, one, I like to diversify just because I do play a lot of fantasy football, and so my rosters I form in February and March are going to be very different than what happens in September. But I also spend a lot of time, I would say, with those February, March rosters where I try to gain an advantage is there tends to be a discrepancy in sort of how the fantasy community is drafting some of the rookies versus what you might see in some of the more, you know, so some of the better mock drafts. And so I'm usually looking for those discrepancies and where, you know, the NFL is valuing those rookies versus how fantasy players are drafting them. So that's where I've had the most success. And you're definitely going to get some wrong. Like, you know, I had Kenneth Walker, for instance, I had as a, you know, top two running back or so, and was repeatedly drafting him in the 7th round. When we went to Seattle, I was just like, why? but for the most part, you know, even if you look at Walker, like his ADP didn't really drop from before the draft. And so even when you miss, it tends not to be the worst thing in the world because rookies their value does get higher after the draft, just as far as his ADP goes.
Yeah, you know, as far as this year's rookies, I didn't think they landed in the best spots, like you talked about Walker in Seattle. Brees Hall, if he would have gone to Buffalo, right? I think a lot of people were thinking he was going to go there. He goes to the Jets now, where he's got to share time with Michael Carter. Maybe some of the wide receivers did all right. What were any of the rookies that you thought gained value, and which ones, really dropped on value?
Yeah, I'll start with the drop. I think Walker was the one I was most disappointed in. Went to a team with a good running back and nothing else you like about them. Whether it's Drew Lock or Geno Smith, none of those guys have a history of throwing check down passes. So it's
Right.
it's the value is going to be waiting for a penny injury, which may happen, but is not what you're hoping for when you pick someone that high. Others have found reasons to be pessimistic. I do love James Cook going to Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
Like, nobody expected him to have that second round draft capital. I think people were more thinking he'd be third. So not only to get higher draft capital, he's going to the right team. And I know there's concerns he's a part-time player, but you couldn't have asked for a better situation for a guy who in your drafts were, going late teens before the NFL draft happened. So he's someone I'm really, really excited about. You're right. The wide receivers didn't really land in the right spots. A couple guys I'll have my eye on. Jalen Tolbert and the Cowboys, I think has a big opportunity if he can take advantage of it on that depth chart. And I'll also see how Sky Moore shakes out on the Chiefs. But you had to be disappointed, if you were heavily invested in a Garrett Wilson or someone like that. So just based on the landing spot.
Yeah. Do you like any of those wide receivers? I mean, who's the top one that you would say? Olave's out there. Treylon Burks, obviously went to a good spot once they got rid of A.J. Brown. Garrett Wilson is with the Jets. Drake London going to Atlanta could, get a lot of targets, you would think. Anybody like from those guys?
They're all very similar to me. So the one, if I had to choose one for that number one spot, I would probably give it to Drake London, just given the combination of draft capital and very easy opportunity to be their number one receiver, along with Pitts and nobody else really. But after that, once you're talking about like Olave, Wilson, Moore, I'm taking whichever one falls later. I don't see the need to reach on one of those. So I am ending up with those guys fairly often, but like it's whoever drops to the 12th round rather than at their 10th round price.
Yeah. So when do you start picking up on best ball again? I know you like to do a lot before the NFL draft. There's kind of been a lull right now. A lot of people haven't been jumping into draft champions. When do you start up again?
Yeah, I actually just got back into a couple. I like doing a couple right after the draft because I don't feel like people always react the way they should to players getting drafted and depth charts immediately shifting. And so right after the draft, I think is a good time. It's always good to just, for me, take a couple weeks break, sort of reset and remember and think through again how you value these players once these depth charts have completely shifted, because everything's different after the draft.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you were at Disney World last year when I did call you to tell you you made the Hall of Fame. And not only that, but you were drafting multiple teams, and I had just seen you sign up for a couple, so I didn't realize you were in Disney World. How does your family put up with this? How does your wife put up with this, huh?
She's losing her patience. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's great. I think they understand that. I don't know if I could have too many hobbies like this, but I think they understand that, it's something I'm good at and something I enjoy. So, occasionally, I'll get told to put the phone down during dinner when I got a couple teams going. But I think if I stay away from dinner, if I change the 1-year-old's diapers, I'll get the benefit of the doubt on the drafting. So.
There you go. Well, she's kind of a football fan too. I mean, she's been to our live events and she understands the game and how it's played and all that stuff. Is she a Bears fan like yourself?
Yeah. She's it actually upsets her sometimes when I play fantasy football, because she's more of a Bears fan, and I'll be rooting for my fantasy player who's usually running in the end zone against the Bears, because the Bears are a perfect team to target. Yeah. And when you have an offensive player playing. So we sometimes get mad where I have to like hold in a celebration, after Aaron Rodgers throws a touchdown to someone.
So as a Bears fan, do you avoid Packers then or not?
No, I've I would say Devontae Adams over the past few years was one of my most heavily owned players. I've usually been more of a wide receiver guy, and I'm definitely someone who's more of like I believe a little bit more in a player's opportunity over talent, and so usually Packers are one of the offenses that's usually attracting me. And this year I'm looking at Aaron Jones to sort of fill that void as Aaron Rodgers' primary playmaker.
Well, I totally agree with you there, and I've said that on our Sirius XM show. I think he could be the leading receiver this year for the Packers. I think they're going to do two backs, A.J. Dillon and him. They're going to swing him out. I think they're going to match him up on linebackers, and I think he's going to have a great year. I mean, Tom loves him too, but his ADP right now is about 20 in the RotoWire Online Championship.
Aaron Rodgers knows how to find a playmaker, and say what you will about him. He's going to get the guys who can make plays the ball, and so that's if I look at that team, that's just Aaron Jones at this point. So
yeah, no, I totally agree with you. All right, let's talk about the NFFC Classic. That's our signature contest. It's a 14-team national contest. I mean, you won your Las Vegas Classic League title last year. You finished 25th overall. You've won 4 Classic League titles since 2009. You finished 3rd in 2020. You have at least 3 top 10 overall finishes. I know you want to win an overall national contest. Wouldn't matter which one, but man, even winning the Classic overall would be a lot of good. What do you like most about that format?
I like the strategy that sort of the strategy shift for me there is in a 14-team league like the Classic. I actually don't find you need to hit a lot of home runs. You can just really play it safe. And if you construct a team that has the depth to withstand bye weeks, you can, it might sound hard to win a 14-team league, but if you can just fill out your roster each week in that format with guys who are on the field and a decent offense, you can be successful with some teams that, might not otherwise catch people's attention. So, I think one of my strategies in that contest has typically been, I want those wide receiver spots because those guys are less likely to get hurt. And once your depth is gone, that's a really tough format to recover in. Right. And so I'm tend to push wide receivers a little higher in that format. And then oftentimes to fill out the running back position, I'm going to, your third down type backs just to get 10 points and fill it out because that's all you need.
Right. So we always say you leave the Classic draft with one hole, right? You can't get everybody good at every spot, but you're saying just find even that RB2 who can get you 8 to 10 points every week is a plus up on the Classic.
Yeah, and I would say in your 12-team formats, I'm a lot less concerned with filling out my RB2 just because there are guys that are going to pop up on the waiver wire every year. You don't know who they are, but you stash enough bench spots, you'll hit one. The same's not always true in the Classic, so I do care about having maybe a more well-rounded team in the Classic than I do.
Yeah. All right, so the Classic's got a little different format this year. We're putting all the money in the league prizes, $15,000 for the league prize, which I think is really solid because that's tough enough to win the 14-teamer. So you win that league, you get $15,000. Now we won't have prize money in the overall, but we're still going to crown an overall champion. We've had 18 different champions in 18 years. I think that tells you how tough the format is, right? No one's been able to double up on that one.
Yeah, no, I remember my very first contest in the NFFC was a Classic, and I had the number 1 team for the second half of the year, and I was like, oh, this is easy. Surely I'm going to get one of these, and still hasn't happened. So no, it's you don't have to tell me it's tough. I'm just going to keep trying.
So, okay, the first year you joined the NFFC was in 2009. You competed live in Chicago. You won a Classic League title, like you said. What do you remember about that first live draft? You're coming in, you're like 25 years old, right? You're coming into an event that's now in its 5th year, 6th year. What were your thoughts of that first live draft?
I mean, I remember everything because going into it, I didn't really know anyone there. So I was really just taking in, I've never, I'd been in work fantasy football leagues with friends, but I'd never really competed against, 12, 14 guys who all know what they're doing. So it was a little intimidating, but I could go back and round for round, I could tell you every single player I drafted in that first NFFC Classic and even remember spots where like I was down to the wire and, someone was asking me for a pick and I was just like, Cedric Benson. No, I remember everything about that. And what was great about that contest is back in 2009, when you had the Chicago event, I was able to meet a couple people, went back the next year, they introduced me to their friends. And now by the time I'm going to your dress these days, it's
Right.
there's 50 people I'm looking forward to catching up with each time I'm there.
Right. I think in 2009, we had like 4 leagues in Chicago. I think Billy Wazowski was out there and Wayne Ellis and a lot of veterans there. So you got to meet those guys, and it was good competition that year in Chicago.
Yeah. In my draft, I was 4th. Wayne was 5th, and Billy was 6th. So you had us all in a row.
Who would have known in 2009? I didn't even know who the hell you were. So I didn't know. So you did an auction that year as well. Had you ever done football auctions before?
No, that was my first one. And actually,
Wow.
that one I sat next to Jack Hahn.
Yeah.
And that one, I remember coming away with an okay team, but I did take notes, on sort of what Jack had been doing, because I remember him coming away with a team I really liked. I think Billy had a team I really liked in that auction as well. And so that was my very first one. No mock, no anything. And I was able to learn a lot just playing with those players and compete a little better than the next crack at it.
Well, so you're a guy who dominates auctions right now. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but just think, you just jumped in, right? I mean, you're going to learn on the fly, and that was a 650 auction league. So, at that time it was affordable and such like that. But that's good advice to tell people that, listen, there's only one way you're going to learn and get better, and that's continue practice, even if it's in pay leagues, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say with auctions, there's no better experience than just going in there and giving it a shot. And nowadays you have so much data on your website too that not everyone does. But if someone came in and wanted to take advantage of it, they can see what the players' average auction values are and really map out their team in advance, find something that would make them happy. And you have to have some flexibility, but there's a lot of good information out there on your website for someone trying to jump into it.
Yeah, even when you do the online auctions, the AAV, the average auction value, is right there next to the player. So when he's nominated, you kind of know what he should go for, and go above if you want him badly, or if it's a bargain, jump on in. So it's cool. Okay, so again, 2009, you're about 25 years old, right? You joined this contest. How did you first hear about the NFFC, first of all?
Yeah, I recall, I don't even remember what magazine it was. It was a magazine advertisement, and I saw your mustached face on it. And
that would have been our magazine then, probably Fantasy Sports Magazine.
And I remember the fantasy sports magazines from when I was a kid. Just I collected baseball cards and also was really interested in fantasy football when I was a kid. I tried to organize it with my friends and do newspaper box scores and all that stuff, but never really found a group of friends who was terribly as into it as I was. So I recognized the name and I was like, wow, this, high stakes world exists. That sounds really fun, right up my alley. And hey, I just got a job. So now I actually have money and can actually give it a try. So like I said, I had recognized, you and Tom from the past, knew you were a trustworthy group of guys, and just decided to jump in and give it a shot.
Cool. Sounds good. Yeah, maybe you saw our baseball cards magazine. I was editor of that from 1990 to 2002, and I was doing fantasy sports magazine, fantasy baseball magazine at the same time. But the card industry just hit a lull in 2002, and that magazine went away. And I actually came up with the idea of doing the high stakes after seeing WCOFF, and I was like, okay, I got to transition or I'm going to be out of a job because the magazines are getting tougher and tougher. So that all turned out pretty good in 2002 when we decided to do the high stakes. All right, let's talk about auctions again, because honestly, you could be inducted in the Hall of Fame just for these accomplishments. Before last year, you had won at least one live auction league title for 9 straight years. I mean, that's unreal. Now, you didn't win a live auction league last year, but you did win an online auction championship league title. So did you win a league?
Live auction last year, Greg. The streak is alive.
What league did you win?
New York Super Auction.
Oh, the New York Super Auction. Okay, I'd ask Tom. Cool. 10 in a row then, right? 10 years in a row.
We've got another decade.
I love it. Well, you won an online auction championship league, so I was going to extend it just on that. But you did win the Super Auction League in New York. Excellent. Okay, what makes you so good at auctions? That's the question there. What makes you so good at them?
I guess what I would say my strategy is, I'm willing to accept value, however it comes. I would say I like to base my teams around wide receivers, but I guess I'm willing to take on, like I said, whoever drops. And every year there are names that come up, whether it's like Josh Jacobs last year, David Montgomery 2 years before, who by the time you get to Vegas, everyone has just unanimously decided they hate. And I've had a pretty good luck, sort of filling out my running back positions with that strategy while being able to attack top receivers. But for me, an auction is just, the ultimate form of draft, because you go into it, you can have any player. I actually, did an article with Establish the Run last year, sort of walking through sort of my key strategies and sort of what's important to me. But I can tell you a few things that I see other players do that are maybe mistakes. A lot of times at a live auction, you'll see people, leave money on the table. They'll be the guy who has $10 left, but nobody to spend it on. I think one of the other things I really prepare for in the auction format is at the end of those auctions, when you want those $2 players, you really got to know in advance who you're going to target or not. Because if you're a step slow, you're not going to have a chance at those players and get those high upside backups that can fill out a team who is relying on receivers. And then I also just, I'm constantly thinking of during the draft of strategy and how I can extract money out of opponents for players I don't like, whether that's, if let's say there's a wide receiver run and prices are going too high, I'm usually nominating the wide receiver I like the least and getting as much money off the table as possible so I can clean up on the players I like.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of strategy in nominating. People don't realize that. I mean, there's certain guys who nominate a player that they want every time. Doesn't matter what they're going to pay for if they want them right now. I always love to just nominate guys I don't want. I want as much money out of the table as possible. So the top guy available, I'll nominate that. I don't want him. I don't care. Let's get some money off the table, right?
Yeah, and it can shift too. Like, let's say you start a draft. Sometimes people are a little timid and want to get their feet wet. And when the draft starts, and early on you might see the first player or two like, gee, that was a bit low. And in that instance, I might nominate a player I want before people realize, oh, there's all this money on the table and I have no one left to spend it on. So it definitely shifts in terms of going with the flow and really what you're seeing, how you're seeing prices compared to what you think they should go for.
All right. So remember, Chris has won at least one auction league title in 10 straight years, and that streak is still going. He's thinking for another decade here. So you're going back to New York to defend your title. Last year you went to New York for the first time. You always come to Las Vegas for both weekends. But talk about New York City, because you got to meet some new guys. The East Coast is crazy, man. But what was it like in New York last year?
It was great. It was like stepping into Chicago all over again, because it was just a whole new group of people that I hadn't had a chance to interact with much. But same with all your locations. I mean, you guys just have a really friendly community, and so it was great to put some names and just put some faces next to the names I've competed against in drafts in the past, and again meet a whole new group of people. And the weather is a bit better in New York that time of year than Vegas, so it was a nice little precursor to the Vegas trip.
I disagree with you. Vegas, when it's 110 degrees and you're by the Bellagio pool, is the best. I love it there. So
yeah, I did see you had Tommy Libretti a couple weeks ago. I was in that draft where he won the prime time, unfortunately. I asked for my cut of his check for taking Tyler Lockett over Cooper Kupp, but it has not come in the mail.
I don't think any of us saw Cooper Kupp at pick like 32, 33 doing what he did last year, but that's the beauty of fantasy football. People complain to me, I didn't get a top draft pick. Like, well, I'm sorry about that. Okay, if you could have got Cooper Kupp 3 different times, right? No matter where you drafted. So It's interesting. Speaking of wide receivers, I don't want to give up any secrets, but I think people know you love wide receivers, and you in auction leagues, you go after wide receivers. Does that change much, and why do you like wide receivers so much? That seems to be the base of your foundation for most of your rosters, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the couple things I like the most about I don't like force. I guess I'll say I don't like forcing it. But the couple things I like most about having a wide receiver heavy team is you are less likely to deal with injuries. They can still happen to anyone. And then I've just always had a much easier time, at least me personally, finding running backs on the waiver wire than wide receivers. I think in order for a wide receiver to hit on the waiver wire, they need to both be talented and have the right quarterback. And usually those guys don't come out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas all a running back needs is carries. If you told me Sony Michel was going to be a 3-down back, and play 90% of snaps, I don't care how talented he is. I'd put him in my top 5 overall. And so just running back is such an opportunity-based position that, I have a lot better luck filling out my rosters that way than wide receivers. But I don't like to be too rigid with how I construct lineups, and I'll definitely have an occasional auction team or two that, has 3 stud running backs. So try to go with where the values are. Especially,
the wide receiver position is so deep this year. I could see, honestly, you could start out wide receiver, and there's still a couple of running backs. The Montgomery's there, to Cam Akers is there in the 3rd and 4th round. I think we do see more people starting out with top wide receivers than we have in past years. I don't know. What do you think?
Absolutely. I would say when I started the NFFC, I was almost rigidly constructing no running back teams from like 2009 to 2015. And I've actually had one losing year with you guys. It was 2016. and I think it was just because I was so rigid in that strategy, and that's how I've been doing it. That's how it has to work. But I felt like at that point, when Odell Beckham, Julio Jones, Antonio Brown, they all had the big year at the same time, people started to realize, hey, those guys are league winners too. And it sort of shifted where now I'm probably more falling with where the value is, whereas I used to be almost strictly no running back.
Yeah, interesting. So if you had KDS right now, I mean, you got Jefferson going in the top 5, you got Chase going in the top 5, you got Adams in the top 10. What would KDS look like for you right now?
I like 4, 5, 6 because I like getting usually one of Kupp or Jefferson will fall there. And if not, then okay, I'm fine with an Eckler or a Harris or a McCaffrey. But I have all those guys ranked so similarly that I don't necessarily like the 2 or 3 spots. And so, I like the middle of the draft right now. I don't like, I like it more in your contest than any other because of the 3rd round reversal. I probably don't like the end as much this year. Just haven't, you've got Adams going there, and I don't know that he's going to have the, same targets with Carr as he did Rodgers, and
no, he won't.
and some of those other running backs have a little more concerns, whether it's age in the shoulder with Dalvin or the Bengals have never really given all the carries to Mixon, so I like the end a little bit less this year, but 3rd round reversal helps soften the blow when I end up there.
Oh, it sure does. I mean, I'm sorry. I think 3rd round reversal is the only way to go. It's the fairest way to go. Otherwise, you're like, I don't want 12. What do I want 12 for? And I just think it changes all the dynamics. I'm so glad we went to that. But all right, let's talk about the 14-team Super Auction League. We do this in Las Vegas. It's gotten to be such a great contest. It's filled up already. Jared Danielson used to tell me that if he could win one league title each year, it would be that one. He said it's the hardest league we have. He said anyone who wins that should be in the Hall of Fame. I know he won it once, so I think he wanted to be in the Hall of Fame. But you won this league title in 2015. How tough is that Super 14-team auction league?
I think it's the toughest league that you guys have. I feel like auction players in general are maybe a little more on the strategy end, and that's always attracted your very best players, and it being a 14-teamer on top of that, like there's no one on the waiver wire in that league ever. And so I echo Jared's sentiment, and I'll miss him this year. I know that how much that league meant to him, and I always love catching up with him that league. So that'll be tough to do without him this year. But yeah, I would say bar none, that's the toughest league that I participate in.
Yeah, speaking of Jared, I mean, this is a guy who joined the NFFC in 2010. He actually had won a national title in 2009. The company did not pay him. They went under, and we had heard about it, and we comped him to come into the FFC, and he just became an ardent fantasy football fan with us, and he brought a bunch of guys with him to Las Vegas every year. And I mean, he was about your age, and he passed away last October. He was in Las Vegas at our live events. He was in the super auction, and he's such a great, great guy. I mean, if it's one thing that it taught us, it's not to take these days for granted, right? I mean, these times when we get out to Las Vegas and we meet people and stuff, we just can't take them for granted anymore. This guy was 30 some years old and unfortunately passed away. What can we learn from that? And what did we learn from Jared, who just loved this industry and this community?
No, I mean, Jared fit your community really well, as just far as being a guy who loved to talk fantasy football at these drafts with anyone and everyone who would come up to him, and was so competitive, but also so open and willing to share, his strategies and talk through. One of the things I'll remember about Jared, I mentioned my early years, I was pretty much a zero RB guy. I would say nobody was ever more zero RB than that guy.
Yeah.
He was the one guy like who you just always see 4 or 5 yellow stickers come out anytime he drafted. But it definitely hit me hard when I saw the news on your message board, and I couldn't believe it. Not anything I would have ever expected.
No, for sure. Great, great guy, about 36 years old, and he will be missed. We'll have to do something special in Las Vegas for sure for him, to honor him, because he was a guy who was very, very close to the Hall of Fame, was one of our best players ever, for sure. All right, let's talk about the primetime. We haven't talked about that format yet. You won another primetime league title last year. You've now won 9 primetime league titles since 2012. You've actually won about 38% of your primetime leagues. Like, you're not in multiple ones every single year, and you're doing really, really well, winning 38%. What is it about the 12-team format that you like so much?
I like I said, I like the ability to catch up on running backs through free agency. 38% is good.
Oh yeah.
But no, I don't know what the secret has been there, other than I will say the one thing I've sort of noticed in your live drafts too. I mentioned a little bit earlier with Jacobs last year and Montgomery the year before. By the time you get to your live drafts, I feel like a lot of going before your live drafts, I think people are more going off of ADP a little closer. Yeah. Once people start really going after the guys who they like, it really does present tremendous values and opportunities where guys, who might not be the sexiest names, get overlooked. So I've always had the most fun at those live drafts, just because I go into them not knowing as much what will happen versus your online drafts. But I don't know. I don't really know what the key has been there, other than I hope I keep it up there.
There you go. All right. Let's talk about one more format that we have in the NFFC. This one's called the Kickoff Gridiron League. It's something that KJ Duke brought to us. It's a great, great format. You actually bid for your first round spot with real dollars, and then you bid again with real dollars for your second round spot. And the spot you get in the second round, that's your spot for the rest of the way. So all of the draft spot bidding money goes into a pool. We pay 100% out to the weekly winners, the points winners each week. And it's just a really cool format, and it's best ball scoring. It's draft champions after you're done drafting. 12 teams, 26 rounds. We've got 14 teams, 26 rounds. I know you love that format. We have it up in a suite in the Bellagio. We've got a suite rented out again for this year. It's a fun format, and it's a very unique format, isn't it?
No, that one is probably the most fun league, just for the combination of the weekly prize. KJ does a great job running it, and then it's similar group of people each year. I'm sure if the league numbers expanded and KJ wanted to take more on, I'm sure there'd be people willing to sign up, because it's a lot of fun to bid with real money on your draft spots, and again create some interesting teams. I think I had had a Christian McCaffrey and Najee Harris team last year, whereas I never would have been able to do that in a regular draft format. So that's definitely fun with the big Bellagio suite and overlooking the fountains and everything. That draft is Vegas.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's great for sure. And like you say, you can spend a lot of money for the top pick in the first round. You can spend a lot of money for the top pick in the second round. That gives you the top pick in the third round. But then you got to win some weekly prizes to get that money back, right?
Yeah, I have to brag in that one. I've cashed in all 8 gridirons I've entered. So wow. I know that's not going to last. And so
that's a tough field to go against too. I know you're always like in second, third. I'm doing the weekly updates and I see you in the top 3 there. And but you got to win them both next year, right?
Yeah, it's been lucky. I think I've had a lot of success just taking whoever the 49ers third running back is every year. And
there you go. That might be the strategy this year too. Who knows with Shanahan, right? It's a top guy is new every single year. Okay, so what's the learning curve for you in the NFFC? What's the one thing you've learned since 2009 that's really helped you become a better player from playing in the NFFC?
I think anytime, I only recently started doing like a couple of years ago, the draft champions type formats. Yeah. So I'll use that as an example. You guys have it plastered all over your website, who the players are who have been successful, whether it's, your Hall of Fame, your career earnings leaders. It's not hard to find out who's been successful in these leagues, and they're joining your $25, $50, $150 leagues. And so there's no better way to learn than just hop in a draft with them, lower stakes, see what those guys are doing. I know when I started I think I mentioned this to Wayne Ellis, when I started the draft champions a couple years ago, I had watched a couple of his teams just to get a feel for, how the roster construction might be a little bit different than, your prime time or your classic, where, I'm relying on strategies there where I can pick up a second running back in free agency. Well, I can't really do that in a best ball. So it definitely changes, how I construct a team. And so I would say, you guys are making it known to everyone who's succeeding. It's not hard to get in cheaper drafts with those guys and see what they're doing. That's really the best way to mock draft, is to find a cheap draft where you have a couple good players. And I know that's what I did for formats I wasn't familiar with. That's how I got better at auctions, looking at, like I said, what Jack was doing. And so again, so many great lower price points to learn from top competitors.
Yeah, and Chris is in a lot of 150 draft champions leagues. Jump on in. You can certainly see what he's been doing and compete against them. And it's all best ball scoring, so you don't have to do anything after draft day. It's just the easiest format. And like you said, it's like a mock draft, but there's money involved, and people don't quit after the first couple rounds. They're continually drafting and looking for bargains. So jump on into any of our draft champions. They're all best balls, the 25, 50, the 150 for sure. The 151 has a $30,000 grand prize. Chris is usually in the top 3, but he doesn't win that overall yet, but he's trying. Hey, let me talk about NFFC has 6 points per passing TD. Some people look at that and go, I got to get a QB because that's so much points I don't want to lose out on. But honestly, all the top QBs are pretty close to each other. So does the 6 points per passing TD affect your drafting style? Do you want a QB more? Or are you one of these wait on QBs guys, even though it's 6 points per passing TD?
Different for the format, I would say. I mean, it definitely increases the need for a QB, but I still don't view it as a must-have for a redraft league where you can stream good matchups. I do think it's a little more important to have a good QB in your draft champions format. Like, without that option to stream, you don't really know who the quarterbacks who are going to come out of nowhere are. So, I'll have a team. I had a team last year with Tom Brady, Sam Darnold, and Baker Mayfield. And it was Tom Brady who scored my points like 15 out of 17 weeks. So it's without the ability to pick up waivers and the draft champions, I would endorse taking a QB a bit earlier than others. But I'm still pretty comfortable waiting on quarterback in the redraft leagues and, finding there's usually going to be a running quarterback who comes out of nowhere and, Tim Tebow's it up for some sloppy fantasy production.
Yep. So The big thing in the industry is zero running back strategy. And, people are talking about that on certain sites, and you can win that way. Are you a zero running back strategy, or are you a modified running back strategy? I mean, you don't just abandon the running back position.
Yeah, there was, like I said, when I started the NFFC, I was more of a zero RB because other people weren't doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But I always think you got to zig when others zag, and if it really nowadays just depends. I'm very comfortable drafting a zero RB team,
Mm-hmm.
but I never want to force it. And nowadays there's also such an advantage between having the running back who will catch passes, and
Yep.
there are a lot of running backs who are almost catching passes like receivers these days. And we talked earlier, I think Aaron Jones might be one of them. So
Yeah. Right.
I think it's better to stay flexible than to commit to one strategy. But if you do go zero RB, the one thing I would just keep in mind is you're going to have to hit waivers that much harder.
Mm-hmm.
And you should not be wasting any depth spots on your bench on other wide receivers or a third QB. Like, you need 6 or 7 running backs that are an injury away from being relevant. And that's how you're going to fill that spot.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about free agency. How hard is it to run multiple leagues and do fab twice a week?
Well, I think I mentioned I'm a busy guy with a busy 55 hour a week job. So I try to contain everything to Wednesday nights and not focus. News is always shifting. There's going to be injury information that comes out Wednesday that's going to totally affect everything and make you redo everything. So I try to keep my managed leagues around 15 or so, just so that I can do it all in a single evening. And then besides those Wednesday nights, it's really just watching football, which I would do anyways. So
yeah, absolutely. What's a Sunday like at your home? Like, you have a youngster, a 5-year-old, like you said. It's not easy to just sit and watch games from 9 a.m. until 9 p.m., right?
No, I definitely push the limits of what I can get away with sitting in front of Red Zone.
Yeah.
But gotta occasionally step away. But I think we have a good system where I think from 11:30 to noon, I'm like, all right, that's got to focus on lineups. And then once noon comes, I can step away from the TV.
Hey, when you're building your rosters, are you building to win the league title or the overall title? Like in the prime time, are you really conscious of the overall, or are you just trying to win your league title?
I think there's so much. I mean, you're talking to someone who hasn't actually won it, so
it's not easy.
I can give you my take on what I think, but no, I think there's so much. Not to take away from those who have, I think there's so much luck that goes into winning that championship. The one thing that I would push for, I would say, in a prime time or any contest where there's a big overall prize, is there I might give a little edge to, if my first round pick is, if I'm taking Stephon Diggs at the end of the first round, well, maybe at the beginning of the third, I might give a little more thought to taking Josh Allen. Just to build those connections. When I have come close in various contests to winning, it's usually been on the heels of a quarterback to wide receiver connection that's blown up. And last year, I think your 2 that would have put you in contention were Rodgers and Adams, and then bigger than that was Burrow and Chase. Yeah. So I think that's the one area where I would adjust my strategy in a prime time versus like a standalone auction, is I would care about that. Whereas in an auction, I'm probably not going to care about having guys on the same team as much.
Right. So when you draft, do you look at weeks 15 to 17, the matchups and stuff? I mean, everything changes all year from week 1 to week 15, but do you look at weeks 15 to 17 when you're drafting?
I give it a little thought, but you never know. But by week 15, you never know which teams are just going to be decimated by injuries. Like, you think a couple years ago, like the 49ers were supposed to be the best defense and you wanted to avoid them. But then, that year they ended up entirely getting decimated by injuries. So I try not to focus on that too much. I certainly feel a little more comfortable if, a guy's playing in a dome and not dealing with snowstorms and all that, and not dealing with whatever we watched for the Bills Patriots playing last year. But, don't give too much too much credit to those matchups.
All right. Well, thanks, Chris. We really appreciate you taking the time. And again, this podcast is just to introduce our high stakes players to everybody in the fantasy football community. You can see Chris is just like any normal guy, certainly more normal than me. So jump on in, compete against him, join the 150 Draft Champions. You can find Chris in almost all of those, and it's great prep. And there's good prize money to be won as well. So we'll keep on doing this. We got a couple more lined up as well. So final question, Chris, I got to ask you. How excited are you for the live events? I mean, I am pumped for the NFL this year. I just think it's going to be wide open. Anybody can win. I think in fantasy football, the first round is still kind of wide open and such. I just think it's going to be a blast. We got New York City planned now, which is going to be very unique at a Dave & Buster's in Manhattan. We got the Bellagio. We got Park MGM in Las Vegas. I'm just excited. How about you? How excited are you for this season?
Very, very excited. It's always my favorite. Going to Vegas is always my favorite weekend of the year to draft your live events, and just it's my perfect day is spending all day drafting, drinking, eating ice cream bars to your chagrin, and
it's all right. I pay for them anyways.
Brady always likes to point that out in the auctions. Yes. Whenever I grab one, but no, it's the best year because I'm catching up with people who I've met over the years, and some I keep in touch with regularly, some I don't, but it's always good to connect with people and nothing I enjoy more than drafting fantasy football teams. So
are you bringing family to either location?
Haven't decided yet. We got a 1-year-old, so might give him another year, but haven't decided yet.
All right, sounds good. I know you brought your little one, I think in 2009 to Las Vegas, and that was kind of nice. Jason Steves was there. He had a little one as well. I think he's going to finally get back. He hasn't been able to come to the live event, so he's coming to Las Vegas. So should be a lot of fun. But thanks, Chris. You've had a great success so far. I'm glad to see you're not resting on your laurels, winning 20 league titles last year. Let's get a national championship this year out of you. What do you think?
That's the goal. So I want that primetime one.
All right, sounds good. $250,000 in the primetime this year. $250,000 in the RotoWire Online Championship. Thanks to everybody for joining us today, and look for another one next week as I line up another high stakes player. Thanks very much. Stay well, everybody.